Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Big Beppis coming at you today with another deck profile, and as you can see by the lovely background here, it is another Nova Grappler deck profile. This is actually an update to my Nova Grappler deck profile that I uploaded around a year ago, back in April. So it works very similar. I've just been testing and tweaking with it, and just trying to get it to run more consistently without relying on the big wombo combo Scarlet Bird plays. The deck can still do that. It's just now it's more consistent without having to find your Scarlet Birds. So obviously we still, because we are running Scarlet Bird, like I said, we're still running Beasted White Tiger as our starter. We need the name for Scarlet Bird's Effect and Soul. We want the card draw. It's just an overall really good card. V starters are just really good in premium in general. So now we're gonna go with the grade ones. So of course, like I said, we're running 4 Beasted Scarlet Bird. On place during main phase, so blast 1, stand all your units. If you stand 2 or more and you have White Tiger and Soul, draw a card. This enables our big combo plays with Bustered, and it's just an overall staple for this build of the deck. Next up, we're still running 4 copies of Extreme Battler Gzone. This card is great for the matchups where your opponent has interaction, because a GB1 you can rest it to choose 5 of your rear guards and give it resist, which is fantastic. Also allows you to, because you're resting itself, it allows you to get a rested unit to combo off with Bustered, which is incredibly helpful. And then also has a rush ability that when it stands by one of your card effects, it gains 4k for each face-up card in your Gzone. This combos really well with Bustered because when you stay in your field of cards, you can trigger Bustered multiple times, and you also trigger Gzone if he was one of the units that stood. And because of how auto effects resolve in Vanguard, you choose the order. So you resolve all of Bustered's skills first, flipping up your Gzone, and then you resolve Gzone, and he just gets power based off of the number of flipped up cards. So like, say I stood 3 units with Scarlet Bird, procced Bustered's effect 3 times, flipped 3 cards face up, and all of a sudden Gzone is a 19k beatstick. It's really great. It's a really useful card. And the change we made to our deck, not only are we running less grade 1s now, we're down to 12, we're running 4 copies of Riser Custom. And the reason we're running this card is, well, actually there's 2 reasons. 3 technically, I'm sorry, yeah, 3. So, 1, if you're going first and you ride him, you have that option to put a card from your hand into Soul, which allows you to get an attack off on turn 1. So that's either going to force your opponent to eat a damage, starting them at a disadvantage, or drop a card to guard with, also putting them at a disadvantage. Now, negging a card sounds bad, but you will eventually recoup it in the long run when you go into Bustered. And then the second reason that we run him is because of his restand skill. So the first attack is really good, but the card into Soul is what we're really aiming for there, because we want to get as many cards into Soul as possible with Bustered. And then his second effect, that when one of your other units in the same column as him stands, I'm sorry, rear guards in the same column as him stands, you can stand him. So that's really helpful for your turns where you don't have Scarlet Bird to restand your whole field, and you have to proc restands another way. He combos really well with Brutal Jack, which I'll go over when I actually get to Brutal Jack. And he also combos well with one other tech card that we're running. And overall, it's just good in general, because a restanding booster for when you're restanding your rear guards to attack is really useful. So another big change we're making to the lineup now that we're moving on to grade 2s. We are no longer running Kick Typhoon, which unfortunately, as much as I love that card, in today's meta it can't really keep up. We are running 4 copies of Cool Hank. So we're running Cool Hank for one primary reason. It's the fact that his restand does not cost a counterblast. This meta is very much about damage denial, so if you're playing that kind of game and your opponent's trying to deny you damage so you can't get your abilities off, Cool Hank doesn't care. You have a card in hand, you can restand something. That's all it cares about. Also, his Vanguard ability, when his attack hits, you get the Soul Blast 1 draw card, is nice, but you really prefer to reserve your soul for your Bustered turns. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, you get immediate card advantage, but you don't get the later advantage of gaining drive checks with Bustered. So it depends on really what you choose. And, riding him's fine. It's not really preferred. Your preferred ride target in this deck is actually Brutal Jack, because Brutal Jack on Vanguard or Rearguard is just 19k during your turn for whatever reason, because they decided to make that card really stupid with this card. And Brutal Jack is great because Yeah, he can't stand during your stand phase, but he has an axe skill that lets you rest 2 rear guards to stand it. So that's great because A, it can proc Bustered with his skill, B, it sets up more rested units for you to proc Bustered even further, and C, it combos with Riser Custom. So the way this combo works, because of how axe skills work in the game, you can pay the cost first before you resolve the skill. So if you have a column of Brutal Jack Riser Custom, you can rest both of them as cost for Brutal Jack. Brutal Jack will stand himself, and then Riser Custom will see Brutal Jack stand, so he'll stand. So that gives you an immediate 2 procs of Bustered, which is incredibly good. 2 free procs of Bustered, literally free, and it allows you to, get 2 extra drive checks, and it's just good. It's all around good. And he's 19k beat stick. He's 24k on an Excel 2 circle because you want to draw. So yeah, that's the reason you run him. And it's also the reason I put Riser Custom back into the deck because in testing I found that Riser Custom is just insane. Then our last grade 2 that we're running 11. We're still sticking with the good old Street Bouncer. On place, rest himself in another unit in the same or another rear guard in the same column. Draw a card. I mean, it cycles. It gets you rested units to proc for Bustered. It's just all around. It's just all around good. So can't beat it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now onto our grade 3. So we're running 10 grade 3s now. Lineup hasn't changed for our main units for the most part. We're still running 4 Azure Dragon. On ride, counterblast 1, draw a card, call a card to rear guard circle, and make it attack is really good. Just because it lets you dig for combo pieces. You can even just force something to miss just so you get a body onto the board and you don't have to drop like a crucial piece like a Brutal Jack or a Cool Hank or something like that. Although a lot of the times because if the unit misses and it makes it restand, a lot of times your opponent will just eat the damage, which can, it can either be really useful or really suck if they hit a damage trigger. It all depends. But really that card draw is what's important. And yeah, he is on attack, counterblast 1, stand something, but that's not really going to come up because we're such a damage-starved meta that it's really not going to come up that often unless your opponent has like Home or something and you're forced to attack Vanguard. Then of course next we have 4 Illuminal Dragon. We have to run this card. It becomes a massive beat stick if something else hits. Again, it's Excel. We want Excel 2. It's just overall good pressure. It's a fantastic rear guard. It's an okay Vanguard. Because if your opponent does give you that counterblast, that means that they can't really afford to block an attack because it'll just come back stronger. All around, great card. And then our last grade 3 that we're running is not a unit, it's actually an order. So we're running a Clear Frame Whirling Wash of Curse Cleansing. Oops, sorry, bumped the table. This is just choose one of your circles, unlock the lock card on that circle, stand the rear guard on that circle. If you unlocked or stood a card, draw a card. So the reason we're running this now is because it gives us more options to stand things and proc Bustered. So like, for example, say I have a column that's Street Bouncer and Riser Custom. I call Riser Custom first, then call Street Bouncer, rest the 2, draw a card. I draw into Curse Cleansing. I can use the Curse Cleansing to stand the Bouncer, which will stand the Riser Custom. So then that way we're going an extra card deep, and we're proccing Bustered 2 more times. The main focus of this deck is proccing Bustered as much as possible, while also not having to heavily rely on Scarlet Bird. Like your Scarlet Bird plays are still great, but you don't want to rely on it as much as before because that just leads to more bricks. You want this to be as consistent as possible. And then for trigger lineup, it's your standard trigger lineup. 4 V heal, 4 Keton Pecan because you want to be able to stride. 4 Magnagos, you need Sulfur Bustered. It helps for your mid-battle phase plays, which can be kind of stupid with Cool Hank now. And then, of course, 4 drop PGs, because why not? So, onto the Gzone. Pretty standard. Your main G units. I play 2 Bustered. You probably don't need to play 2. 1 is generally enough, because if you go off heavy enough with Bustered, you're going to be able to follow up with some really stupid strong cards in response. And again, like the whole focus of the deck is you go first stride Bustered, rest your rear guards a bunch, stand them a bunch, and then all of a sudden, hey, look, I have like 6 or 7 drive checks. Time to die. So it's really fun. Again, like I said, I run 2 personally. You probably only need to run 1. Because there's like the Gzone. There's a lot of extra space in the Gzone, even though most of it's filler. So then I also run 1 Origorim. bump my camera arm here. Origorim is just good because we are a multi-attack deck, or reducing your opponent to 0 is just great, plus getting free strides for the rest of the the rest of the fight is great. Don't go into him that much, but when he does come up, it's a really powerful swing turn. Of course, we got one favorite champ, Victor. He is one of your best follow-up strides for Bustered. You know, if you somehow you don't kill your opponent and you somehow live to your next stride, if you're not at GB8, you just go into this thing and it's basically GB8 at that point. Speaking of GB8s, we still run the GB8 because this deck is fantastic at getting your GB8 set up for second stride. And I mean, you get a full board restand and then another full board restand outside of your Vanguard. What's not to love about that? And then the filler stuff, I play a winning champ, it doesn't really come up. Play Sabreeze, never really comes up because, again, damage starving meta. Victoplasma doesn't really come up. As the bulk, doesn't come up ever. If you're striding into this card, you are probably in a very bad position. I wish this card was better than it was, but unfortunately this card is just poop, and I just play it as filler. So that's it for the strides. I'm not running Stark because I feel like Stark's just not a good enough closer. You have better closers because you're a rearguard oriented deck. You want to be able to restand your rearguards and get a bunch of swings off and stuff. And Stark, unfortunately, just like it's not worth investing into him. So as for the G-Guards, I run one Dismal. You want to keep your crucial rearguards are alive, so that's important. Run one Unior. Just in case those situations where you're out of Counterblast or you're out of Soul, you want to be able to recoup that if need be. I run 2 Dogen Titan in those situations where you haven't committed the board yet because you're holding for your big combo turn. Your opponent's swinging for big numbers. A free 25k shield is really good. And then 1 Gundreed. Gundreed's really in here to help accelerate to your GB8, but at the same time, it's really good for getting you back resources if your opponent gave you damage and you dumped a lot of resources into your counterblast. So, really, he's just GB8 accelerant, but he can also be useful for resources at times. Now, overall, the deck is strong. I definitely wouldn't say it's tier 1. There's no way the deck is tier 1. But I would say the deck is really fun to play. This build feels a lot more consistent than my previous build from a year ago. Just with the change of a few crucial pieces. One big thing I have been testing out since they revealed it is the jail order from the Brantgate start deck for Overdress. That 3 extra soul is great, and it also rests a rearguard for you to restand. I've been testing with that, and some turns I've had where I'll play the order, I will drop Bustered, have a bunch of stuff rested, drop a Scarlet Bird, and now Bustered's got like 8 drive checks. So it's a build I'm tweaking around with still, trying to find some consistency for it, but I was testing out stuff with Ethics Buster with this deck, but unfortunately, it just wasn't really good enough, even with running 8 enablers, because you run the 4 Scarlet Bird and then the 4 Lift Taurus. You couldn't find them consistently enough, which, as crazy as it sounds, because you run 8 of them, but you couldn't find it consistently enough to make the deck work, because if your opponent just eats the Vanguard attack, then you're stuck with a Rested Heart and nothing is going on. But yeah, guys, so that's the deck. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed staring at it for the last 2 minutes while I rambled on. If you got any suggestions, for tweaks that I could make for the deck, I would love to hear them. I'm not obviously not all knowing, not all seeing. I often can miss interactions with cards unless somebody points them out to me. But I always appreciate your guys' feedback. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you next time. And hopefully soon I will have some gameplay, game footage for you. So until then, peace.